cloud.
Excellent.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for another Northshire Presents virtual event. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Rachel Person, event director for Northshire Bookstores, joined this evening by some terrific colleagues and by Jess Hunsaker, the brand new event coordinator for Northshire's Manchester store. Before we get started, a couple of very quick notes. First of all, please feel free to use the chat box throughout the evening to comment on any of the books that you see and to ask any questions that you might have. And second of all, I'm about to paste a link into the chat box, which includes a blog post with all of the books that we'll be talking about this evening to make it a little easier for you to follow along at home and to find any of the books later on after this event. That link was also sent to you in your email today with the Zoom link, so you have it there as well in case you need it for future reference. Thank you all so much for being here and for your incredible support and loyalty of Northshire Books to Northshire Bookstore. We couldn't do all of this without you, and we're grateful for you being here and supporting the stores. Jess is going to introduce our first bookseller guest this evening.
Yeah, great. Thanks for starting us off tonight, Rachel. So to get us kicked off is going to be our wonderful bookseller, Cassidy Washburn.
All right, hi everyone. So the first one that I'm going to be recommending to you all is called Looking Glass Sound by Catriona Ward. This is a psychological horror that I would also describe as being a mystery. It follows the main character, Wilder Harlow, as he is writing his own novel about his time visiting the coast of Maine with his family. While he was visiting Maine, he became friends with Harper and Nat, and as young teenagers, they get up to all sorts of shenanigans. And while out and about one day, they find the body of a missing woman, which leads to more bodies being found and a serial killer being discovered amongst their small town. This story itself jumps between the past and then it goes to Wilder's time in college and then the present with him as an adult and still dealing with what happened and the trauma that he experienced when he was younger. I promise you, you will not know where this story is headed until you are right in the thick of it. It is super, super unique. The ending is wild. I'm usually pretty good at guessing with mystery novels, and I didn't see this coming. So very unique. I love this one. I highly recommend it for people who are into horror as well as some mystery. So definitely recommend this one. And then the next one I have to recommend is another mystery novel. It's fairly new, called A Twisted Love Story by Samantha Downing. This is following two characters, Wes and Ivy, who have always had a very, very toxic relationship. They're usually shown to be madly in love, but then they end up like sabotaging each other in some sort of way, sometimes in extreme dangerous ways. So like I said, very, very toxic. During their newest cycle of dating, a detective enters the scene and we soon learn that Wes and Ivy are have been hiding this dark secret from their past. So we follow those shenanigans as well. It's super fast paced. It'll keep you on the edge of your seat. And even though these characters are very toxic, you kind of want to root for them in a way. So this one's definitely highly entertaining and will also keep you guessing. So definitely recommend this one. Another mystery that I want to recommend, it's not new, it's been around for a couple of years now, but it's Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. This one is probably one of the most unique mysteries that I've ever read. It starts out at midnight on the eve before Halloween, and we meet our main character, Jen, as she's anxiously waiting for her 18-year-old son, Todd, to come home that night. When she finally sees him walking down the street, she notices that he's approached by a stranger, and she witnesses her son attacking that stranger and stabbing him and ultimately killing him. So her son is arrested for murder. Later that night, when she finally goes to sleep, she wakes up the following morning only for it to be the previous day. Not the next day, it was the previous day. before any of these events actually happened. She is the only one that remembers this happening. So almost like Groundhog's Day in a way, where she keeps reliving these days. However, it's slightly different because she continues to go into the past. And we find out that she must figure out what led to her son becoming a murderer, and she has to try to stop it. So it's super unique. Again, this is one that I did not see the ending coming, and I love those kinds of mysteries. So if you want something that's going to keep you guessing, I could have read this in one sitting, quite honestly. I did not want to put this one down. So the next one I have to recommend is another mystery. However, this one's set in space, so it's a science fiction mystery called The Deep Sky by Yumi Kitase. And this one is about the Earth when it's on the eve of environmental collapse. And all the nations in the world have gathered together the best, most intelligent 80 individual women to go into this deep space mission to inhabit another planet and restart humanity. Along the way, there's an explosion that leads to several of these individuals being killed, and so the main character has to figure out who amongst them is sabotaging their mission, and who is a murderer. So there's AI in this. It's a new take on a locked room mystery because it is set on a spaceship. This is another one that is quite entertaining to read. So if you want something that is a locked room mystery, but little bit new, in this one would be the one for you because it is science fiction set in space. So quite fun. Going away from the mystery for a little bit, I'm going to recommend The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi. This one is a new start of a new fantasy series from the author of the City of Brass series. It is filled with pirates and magic and forbidden artifacts and ancient mysteries, and it is following our main character, Amina Al-Sarafi, who is a retired pirate, and she accepts one more job to save a kidnapped girl. And it's super fast paced, it's action packed, it has a found family element to it. So fun. The main character is like in her 40s, so you get this amazing like older character finally in a fantasy novel doing her thing. I loved it so much. And if you like found family elements, this is going to be perfect for you. And we don't get enough pirate fantasies, so this one was a lot of fun, and I just love this author's writing, so highly recommend this one. And then I'm going to recommend a middle grade novel that just came out today, actually, called Finch House. This one is a horror novel, horror middle grade, that is perfect for fans of Coraline. When I was reading this, I could not stop thinking about Coraline. It does deal with fear of change and learning that change is okay. And it does deal with generational trauma as well. It follows 11-year-old Micah, who currently lives with her mom and her grandfather, and her mom decides that they're going to move out of their grandfather's house. And this scares Micah. She loves her grandfather. She does not want to move, so she goes for a bike ride to avoid packing, and she ends up going to look at this very old, decrepit Victorian mansion that her grandfather has told her not to go to because many children have gone missing around that mansion. And of course, she does not listen, and she goes to that mansion. Later on, her grandfather goes missing, and she knows that he is in that mansion. So she goes there, and there's a mystery involved, and it's a little spooky, not too spooky, but like I said, like if the kid can handle Coraline, the kid can handle this. Very fun. It is a little creepy, but it's very fast paced, and it will keep your little one reading if they are into that sort of thing. And then I am going to recommend one more book. It is not out yet, but you can pre-order it if it sounds like something that you are into. It is called Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. It is coming out early October, I think October 3rd. I cannot shut up about this book. I have gotten many of my coworkers to read it. It is a sapphic horror that had my jaw on the floor by the end of it, and honestly kind of left me feeling sick, but like in the best possible way for a horror novel. So if that sounds like something you're into, please pre-order it from us because it is phenomenal and I cannot stop talking about it. But that was the last book that I have to recommend.
Cool. Thank you so much, Cassidy. I remember you mentioning Bloom. Like it really sounds very riveting, and like a lot of people in the store have been talking about it. So
Yes.
yeah, that one, I want to check that out myself. Next, we're going to have Paul Thompson give us his recommendations.
Hi there. So I this is my first time doing one of these. So my first book that I'm going to recommend, I actually don't have a copy of because it's so hard to get, and I read the ARC. So it's called Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. If you are a fan of Harry Potter or Divergent or Hunger Games, it follows the same basic thing of a girl trying to choose between two guys. It reminded me a lot of Naomi Novik's novel Temeraire because it's about the Temeraire series. It's about a girl who is she's a small brittle girl, and she just wants to be a scribe, but she is forced by her general mother to enter the Dragon Riders quadrant at her military school, and the mother is the head of the military school, and it really is just a fast read. You can't put it down. I read it in 2 days. Death is never very far away, and the body count is pretty high. It's a very addictive read with a very propulsive story, and there's a reason that it's very hard to get a hold of. We do get copies of it every now and then, and when we get more in, you can always order special order from us, and so we'll put it on hold for you and give it to you. So the next book that I'm going to recommend is a totally different kind of thing. It's American Prometheus by Kai Bird and Martin Sherwin. And you may be familiar with this one because it is the one that the new Oppenheimer movie was based on, the new Christopher Nolan movie. It is quite a big brick, but it really does go quite fast. I was surprised how quickly I ripped through it. Oppenheimer's life is very, very dramatic and compelling for a scientist. He, the book really does get into his emotional life, his love affairs, and his scientific life, and it goes into the science, pretty hard. And it also deals with his political life and his communist affiliations, and how the anti-communists in the government really sort of persecuted him for being sympathetic to the Spanish Civil War and donating money and being communist adjacent during a time when that was not very popular. And so it does get into the Manhattan Project, and also then some of the later things that you see in the movie, where he was forced to lose his security clearance because of the anti-communists coming after him and persecuting him. So I really enjoyed this book. It's very good. It's similar to the movie. Doesn't quite follow everything, but it's pretty similar. If you do see the movie, you'll know and read the book, you'll notice a very controversial episode about an apple, and there are some cool things that you can dive deep into as to whether or not that's true. And Bird really does give you a good sense of the facts behind it, even though like Oppenheimer's family really says it's not true and whatever. So you can get into that if you want. So the next book that I'm going to recommend is another one that I don't have a copy of right now because I read the ARC. It's called So Late in the Day: Stories of Women and Men by Claire Keegan. And Claire Keegan has got to be one of my favorite favorite authors. And this book comes out in November. And it's a collection of short stories. It'll be perfect for anybody who really wants to read about men who are bad and women. And so it's a novel of it's a short stories about women and men, and these women who are just, have these men come into their lives, and they really are just, bad for them. But it deals with a lot with how men perceive women, and how women perceive men, and just how people can be, set in Ireland, obviously, because all of her stuff is set in Ireland. And the stories are just really, really solid, and like all of her, like, she just picks the right word in the right place so frequently. It's amazing reading her prose. It's just like perfect. And I think she's one of the finest writers going at the moment. I just want to lose myself in her world. So this one was good. It was different. There's some pretty shocking moments in it as you get into some of the stories. There's one called Antarctica that like had me totally floored and stuck with me for a little while. And then the next book that I read that I'm going to recommend is also by her, Claire Keegan. It's called Small Things Like These. This book is also set in Ireland, and this one's set in the 1980s. And it follows the story of a man named Furlong, who was the son of a single mother who has several daughters, and his day or two that he goes through where he delivers some coal to a nunnery, and some stuff happens that causes him to basically reevaluate his life, and it really does get into some of the worst abuses of women in Ireland, and it's just a fantastic story. It's really, really got crisp, detail and perfect language again. She really does put you through the ringer in this story, but I can't recommend it highly enough. She's just fantastic. And then the last one was the one that introduced me to Claire Keegan. It's called Foster. And I actually got into Claire Keegan because I saw the movie The Quiet Girl, which is in Irish, or Gaelish, or however you say it, if you're speaking the actual language. And so this book is in English, but it's just fantastic. It's a story of a little girl who has to go to live with some relatives because her family is sort of destitute and needs to cast off a kid for a little while. And so she's a neglected child. She really just needs some minding, is the way that Claire Keegan says it in the book. And so she really does change her she goes through some pretty significant changes because of the loving minding that she gets from this couple who lost a child, and it's really quite spectacular. There is a part of this story that really did kind of change my perspective on how to think about like whether or not you should say something, and whether or not you should speak, and what the value of being a quiet and of a quiet moment, and how, and the word she uses, let's see if I can get to it. She says, many's the man lost much just because he missed the perfect opportunity to say nothing. It's just her language is really great, and I can't recommend it highly enough. Foster. So those are my picks. Thanks.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Paul. And next up is going to be Rachel.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I have a short list to share tonight, and I don't have most of the books here because I have been in a phase of lending things out. So they all went away and they haven't made their way back yet. But I'm going to start off, and you can follow them along and see their covers in the blog post, which I'm going to repost in the chat, in case you don't have that. First up, I'm going to be speaking about This Country, Searching for Home in Very Rural America. This one is a pre-order. It comes out a week from today, so it's coming any day now. But this is a really lovely graphic novel memoir. So I guess graphic memoir. Coming out from Princeton Architectural Press. I don't think they've done a lot of graphic novels, and this one is an early venture into that for them. It is absolutely stunning art. The author, Naveed Mahdavian, also draws for The New Yorker, and his art is absolutely stunning. And this book tells the story of him and his wife deciding to leave San Francisco and become homesteaders as much as they can in a very rural part of Idaho. And on the surface, it's a very sort of classic, almost trite story of, you know, young enthusiastic couple leaves the big city, moves to the country to try to make a go of it with chickens and a plot of land. But underneath, it's a very lovely meditation on what it is to be American, what it is to be an immigrant, what it is to be a transplant to a new community, and all the ways that this young couple both thrives in the new environment and also realizes that they can't survive in this new environment, that they can't build a family and a life for themselves there. It's absolutely beautiful art. It's really well structured and well put together, and a really lovely look at America in 2020, which is when they're there. So This Country, Searching for Home in Very Rural America by Naveed Mahdavian is the graphic novel that I'm suggesting. Next up, I wanted to talk about a book. I have a little bit of nepotism in this one. For those of you who know me well, my husband is Steve Schenken, who writes mostly nonfiction for young adults. This is his first venture into picture book writing. He actually co-wrote it. It is Yuki's Island, which he co-wrote with Yuki Kimura and Kodo Kimura. Kodo Kimura is our brother-in-law, and he is the artist who did these stunning illustrations. So this is based on the true story of Yuki. She grew up, her father was a lighthouse keeper in Hokkaido, which is the northern part of Japan, and was part of the Japanese war effort in trying to keep the shipping lanes open. So this is, in many ways, it's a war picture book written for a young audience, but it's telling the story of this young child living this idyllic life on an island and war is looming. So it's telling a slightly grim, difficult story, but in a way that's very, very accessible to young readers. And the art is absolutely stunning. So as I said, that's Yuki's Island by Yuki Kimura, Kodo Kimura, and Steve Schenken. And that is a picture book. I would say it's an older picture book. You know, it's not for the toddler set. It's more, you know, sort of kindergarten to second grade would be the range I would recommend for that one. Next up, the other book that I have a physical copy of is Knockout by Sarah MacLean. Sarah MacLean is probably my favorite historical romance author these days. She writes really fun, really page-turning romances, and this one is the third book in a series that she's working on called the Hell's Bells series about a vigilante girl gang in Victorian London. They are all members of high society, and they are setting out to right the wrongs that the rest of society isn't going to touch. And this book focuses on Imogen, who is the explosives expert in this girl gang. So she makes chaos and blows things up. So Imogen is, as the book starts, off making lots of chaos, and her family discovers the trouble that she's been getting into and asks a detective to be the one to keep an eye on her and make sure she goes straight. And of course, that does not turn out how anyone thinks it's going to. So this is an absolutely delightful, fun romp through Victorian London with lots of explosions and a girl gang, which really, what more do you need in life? And then turning to something much more serious, but extremely lovely, is the novel You Are Here by Karen Lynn Greenberg. So this one is actually set just outside of Albany in a soon-to-be defunct shopping mall that is important in different ways to the lives of all of the different characters. One of the really striking things about this novel is that it successfully marries, I think, 7 or 8 point of view characters. So there are chapters from a lot of different characters. There's the hairdresser who works in the salon in this mall that's about to close. There's her son who goes there after school every day. There's a teenager who works in the food court. There's the manager of the bookstore. There's a client in the hair salon. And each of these characters, are coming together at this inflection point. This mall, which is part of their routine, part of their daily lives, is about to close, and their lives are about to change, and they have decisions to make. And so each chapter from each of these different characters brings you through something going on in their lives. I was really struck by the empathy of this book. I would read some sections and I would be thinking, oh, that other person, they're terrible. And then I would read their section and I'd be like, oh, well, they're still kind of terrible, but I understand them now. And I just thought it was a really beautifully written book, a really thoughtful and kind book, and also a real tour de force of craft in terms of making all of these multiple points of view work and telling this one story that propels forward, but with so many point of view characters is not at all an easy thing to do. And I was really struck by the craft of that. So that is You Are Here by Karen Lynn Greenberg. And then my last book that I'm going to talk about today is The Road to Roswell by Connie Willis. For those of you who don't know her, Connie Willis is a science fiction and fantasy author. She's an absolute master in that world. Very funny, very quirky. One of my all-time favorites is her book To Say Nothing of the Dog from many years ago, which if you want to go and read some real backlist, that is worth your time. But her new book, which just came out in June, is The Road to Roswell. And it is an alien abduction story, which I didn't think I particularly wanted to read, but I will pick up whenever Connie Willis does. And I was not at all disappointed to have given this book my time. The main character is on the road to Roswell to try to break up her college roommate's wedding to an alien enthusiast. And while there, she gets abducted by an alien and taken off on this crazy Wild West road trip where they keep accidentally abducting more people. Ridiculous shenanigans ensue. I can't even tell you about the plot of this book without it just sounding increasingly ridiculous because it is just so silly. But it made me laugh out loud multiple times. If you're a fan of sort of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy style silliness, this is the book for you. So that's The Road to Roswell. It does have a little bit of a sweet love story, which was fun, but really this one is just all about the delightful, goofy humor. So I highly recommend that. And that is my list for today.
All right, thank you, Rachel. And I've just got a couple of my own to share just to wrap us up for this evening. So the first one I have is actually a collection of poems, and this is by, I think it's pronounced Era Matthews. She says in this book that it rhymes with Sarah. So I'm just going with that. But it's a very powerful collection of autobiographical poems. And this author, she's a Yale Young Poets Award winner, and she's like actively Philadelphia's poet laureate. And this very much reflects how our economy has affected the author and her family. And there are larger implications of class, race, gender, and economics. She, in this, directly challenges that 18th century economist Adam Smith, his invisible hand theory from The Wealth of Nations. She reflects on systemic issues that have affected her throughout her entire life, starting from growing up in poverty to navigating her adult life as a Black mother. And then in terms of the poetics, she uses text from The Wealth of Nations and other economic works. She actually redacts portions to highlight her actual lived experiences. So the structure is pretty unique. Anyone who's interested in like poetry that plays with the page, I think would find this fascinating. And some of the anecdotes that she shares are deeply tragic and others are very amusing. And I found all of them moving. She captures this image of American inequality that I think is just very important to read. We're actually planning an event with her, just to kind of throw a little teaser out there, possibly this November. So keep an eye on the calendar for that. And then my second book is a nonfiction. It's called This Is What It Sounds Like, What the Music You Love Says About You. It's by Susan Rogers. And this book assists the reader with analyzing their music taste to better understand what Rogers calls like someone's listener profile. So Rogers is a professional sound engineer. She's a professor and she's also a neuroscientist. And she unpacks different aspects of music, including authenticity, realism, novelty, melody, lyrics, rhythm, and timbre to help the reader identify what aspects of their favorite songs, artists, and records really resonate with them and why. And she recommends that the reader actually stops at certain intervals to listen to particular tracks that exemplify the different themes she explores, which I found was very sonically engaging. I really enjoyed it. I actually went on a road trip to the Midwest early this summer, and my partner and I were sharing the drive. And one of us would read this chapter to the other, and there's an official Spotify playlist that accompanies this, and it has all of the songs that Rogers references in this book. So we actually would like take a break from reading to listen to a song in its entirety, and it spurred some really amazing conversation, and it just made the entire road trip fly by like road trips have never flown by for me before. So anyone who's interested in music history, I think would find this really engaging. And then my final book, and I guess our final book for the night, is this. It's called One Woman Show by Christine Colson. This is a novel, and full disclosure, I've just cracked into this one today, but it comes highly recommended by some of our other booksellers here, and I'm already really enjoying it, and I just had to give like a little teaser. I couldn't not include it. So the author of this book, she worked for the Metropolitan Museum of Art for nearly 30 years. And during that time, she wrote a lot of wall labels. And she was very inspired by the strict formatting of these labels. And she started to imagine what it might be like to use the format to describe people as though they were works of art. So the novel investigates a 20th century woman as though she is an artifact, and it follows her through her life and these multiple marriages that she has, as though she's a piece of art moving from one collection to another. And it's really supposed to emphasize themes of like womanhood, ownership, value, and power. And it posits some really interesting questions on how we interact with art and how stories in general are told. So we're also going to be hosting this author for an event, I believe this November as well. And I'm very excited about that. So definitely keep an eye out for that as well. More information is to come. And that concludes my list.
Thank you everyone so much for being here. Those are all of our book picks for the evening and some great ones. Thank you so much to Jess and Cassidy and Paul for joining us. Again, you can find the list of all of these titles in the blog post that we emailed out to you and that we've posted a couple of times in the chat. We encourage you to please, if you are going to buy them from Northshire, and please consider getting an early start on your holiday shopping. Some great books for giving on that list. And I hope we see you at another Northshire virtual event one of these days soon. Have a great night, everybody.